The clock's disappeared from the back, but I've been advised that 10:30 has arrived, so we better get started. Welcome you to this meeting of the Governance and Ethics Committee this morning. The first item on the agenda, the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of July. Do I have your approval, those that were present, to sign them as a correct record? Thank you very much. I'll do that at the end of the meeting. The next item on the agenda, apologies for absence. I understand we've got apologies from Councillor Payne, who is on other council business, and yet again, the number one substitute from the bench is Councillor Creamer. I don't know why they don't just appoint you full time and have done with it. Welcome yet again. I'm sure it is. I like to be friendly. And we've got apologies from Nigel Stevenson. I don't know what he's doing. And we've also got apologies from the monitoring officer, who is apparently in the Dolomites, so she told me at our pre-agenda meeting, and she said she would definitely be looking in. So do you want to give her all a big wave to say welcome to this meeting online? The next item, and I assume you're happy to accept those. Are we online? Have we joined? Yes. Yes. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item number 4 is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman's decisions, and we have one which is set out in front of you. We've got a recommendation on page 9, which I will move to get things going.
Chairman, I second as I'm right to speak.
Thank you very much. And I suppose my opening comment would be, here we go again. So perhaps you'd like to say why we're going again.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'm Robert Briggs. I'm the Service Manager of the Pre-16 EHC Assessment Team. The Local Government Ombudsman found fault primarily on the grounds that the local authority failed to ensure that there was adequate provision provided between July 21 and July 23 for the child in question. A financial remedy of £7,700 was directed, which was an increase of the £4,500 offered by the local authority. A number of factors have contributed to shortcomings identified. The pressure on ICDS resulting from the significant increase in requests for EHC needs assessment in 22 and 23 meant that there was insufficient capacity to dedicate to this case. Staff turnover in 2022 also peaked, which meant that there was a discontinuity in the service provided. Following on from the local area inspection, there has been a significant investment in the service to increase additional staffing, with 17 additional staff due to be recruited over the next 2 months. In addition to this, we're also ensuring that all staff have the knowledge and skills to enable them to have accountability for children with EHCPs. Moving forward, the additional resources in place will be a protective factor, and with turnover now reduced, we're confident that the lessons learned from this case will be applied. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Helen Ann Smith, you wanted to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I thank you for your comments, Robert. But I just wanted to. I've sat on this committee for a long time now, as like many of the other people in this room have. And one of the things that continuously comes back from the Ombudsman's reports is a lack of communication. And we're consistently told it's getting better, we're improving. But yet again, on page 18 of the report, it says one of the big problems was a lack of communication. I can't see, and this is from this year, I can't see where we are improving with the communication side of it, and it is something that continuously drags us down. What are we doing to improve that communication? And it's not just within your department, but it's across the board. It's a massive problem, and I can't see that we're improving in that in any way.
Okay, do you want to pick up that point before I come to Councillor Butler and then Councillor Creamer?
Yeah. Apologies. I think if you look at the numbers of EHCPs that we now maintain, we've got 4,040 at the end of August 23. That 35% of those we've made new plans for in 2 years, within 2 years. So there's been a massive increase, and I think as a part of that, communication has not been at the level that we'd expect it to be, primarily due to the lack of resources, and that's why we've looked to recruit an additional 17 staff to ensure that we can actually provide that level of service and ensure that we communicate with families and young people and their carers.
Yeah, come back then.
So when are we hoping that those additional staff are going to be in place? Because as I said, we've been hearing for the last 6, 12, 18 months that we're going to be getting additional staff, and we're still not moving any further forward with that. How long till they're in place?
10 members of staff are now in place through agency. Recruitment is ongoing to the fixed term posts. So the staff are there, but the long term recruitment is being driven at the moment.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, like you and colleagues, it is rather too familiar, isn't it? We've seen and heard this so many times at these meetings, and I do take some encouragement that you're recruiting, and hopefully you will be back up to numbers. But I can't help wondering, and also this touches on the communication side of things, whether do we have an issue with perhaps where people are working, our staff are working? Because you hear a lot, don't you, about people working from home a lot nowadays or working remotely. And I wonder, and it's not necessarily specific to this particular case, but in general across the board, whether the new way of improved working that so many organisations such as ours seem to be doing now, i.e. not being in the office and being on the computer and all the rest of it, whether that could be a reason as to why some of the communication isn't perhaps what it could be. And as a result of the communication not being what it could be, we find ourselves in difficult cases like this. So whether we as a committee or a council have given any thought to really looking at the ways of working in general, I think that I mean, it's just my observation on this. Is nothing quite like when you're in a team environment, and especially when you're dealing with difficult cases, where you can actually go along to a colleague and talk about whatever the issue, whatever the problem is. And I just worry a little bit that in these world of remote working, that isn't quite what it used to be, and as a result, it has a knock-on effect. So it's more of an observation, really, and a question. But the other question I did have on the agreed actions, where we as an authority had suggested the £4,000 compensation to the family, but the Ombudsman, for his reasons, which he's perfectly entitled to do, has suggested 7,200. Well, that's his choice, but I'm mystified in paragraph B under the agreed action on page 7. Pay Mrs F £7,200 to use as she sees fit. Now, I'm not casting any aspersions or whatever, but surely there must be some guidelines that say, well, this must be used for to help the child with the education. I mean, was anything like that put in place? Do we know? I'm just curious, really.
I think that's a very valid point. That is what the Ombudsman said. Either of you, can you comment on that?
Well, the idea is that the parent has responsibility to use it wisely, and they, well, yeah, it's probably actually that's good feedback, to be honest with you. I will actually raise how they've worded that, because they could use it for a house extension or something.
Exactly. That was the sort of thought. I wasn't going to suggest for one moment it wasn't going to be used appropriately, but unless there is a specific guidance as to what that money is for, then it could easily be open, surely, to be spending on whatever.
Yeah, but they do believe that is what they should be rewarded. So in theory, it's for backdating what they would have been, well, what position they would have been in financially if it wasn't for the error. So,
is it possible to go back to the Ombudsman and say the committee are requesting a rewording of your recommendation, so that the money which is being awarded can only be spent on making up for the deficiencies that arose because of the lack of the plan? Can we do that?
Thank you. I'll take that up with them.
Because, like Councillor Butler, I'm very uncomfortable with public money being given out in that way to spend as you see fit. It's not appropriate. Thank you. Do either of you want to comment on the working from home?
I can speak on behalf of my team.
I don't think it was your team that was the point.
No, but I do hear your point about communication. I agree.
It's the principle I'm thinking
Yeah,
of.
I agree that a good team meeting face to face is good for morale as well as discussing issues. But in this day and age where we've got teams and everything, if you want to discuss a case quickly or urgently and you see they're available, you can just ring them, and it is like discussing face to face. But I do agree. I mean, my team, they come in at least. Well, some of them are in every day, but otherwise they're in at least a few times a month, and for key meetings. So I don't think the communication side of things, but that is one thing we are actually emphasising across all departments, not just Rob's, about how we are communicating. But it's not up to us to tell them how to run their department. But thank you for the question.
Perhaps that's something your department can address when you come with the. You're coming back to us, I think, with a 6-monthly update as to the progress that's been made. So that might be something you'd like to include in that report, the impact of any working from home that it might have had on the efficiency of dealing with these sort of issues. Does that help? Right, I've got Councillor Creamer next.
Yeah, quickly, because it's actually been only partly, but when he was actually explaining the insufficient capacity for this particular case, actually worries me a little bit, because it's hardly ever one case, and as we've said right at the beginning, here we go again. So I'm just wondering what else we've got in the pipeline. And when it comes to the additional resources, I was going to ask about that, but that question's been answered with 10, I believe you said, agency staff, which brings in its own worry. I mean, are these agency staff going to be the same staff dealing with problems, or is it going to be X, Y, Z this week and Z being the next week or something, a mixture? So when it's agency staff, I'm just a little bit concerned about how they work and how they identify cases and pass cases on over time, and wondering when we will actually have our own staff dealing with these cases, so we've got continuity. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Do you want to pick that point up before I move on?
Yeah, thank you. I think the agency staff that we've put in place are experienced education, health and care assessment plan writers or coordinators. So they bring with them a wealth of experience from the local authorities. They operate on a caseworker model, so they will pick up some cases and they will hold them for a short period. But the plan is that they will remain in place and hand over those cases to the new workers as they are recruited. So it won't just be that they finish one day and the new worker starts the next day. We intend to ensure that casework is handed over effectively, but ultimately there will be a change in worker for some children, young people and their families.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. More employees, how will that improve communications? That's one question. And a lot of this appears to be administrative issues. So perhaps do we need to review policies and procedures?
We have apologies. More EHC coordinators ensure that the number of cases or children, young people that a EHC coordinator is responsible for reduces. So prior to the additional appointment, prior to the appointment of the staff, they had approximately 250 cases each. It's now reduced down to 130, which is a relatively low level for local authority, and that ensures that families are, they've got that additional time to be able to communicate and do an effective job really with the work that they need to carry out, because they were managing so many different tasks from, they might be writing a new EHC plan, they might be attending an annual review, they may be looking at a change of placement for somebody, and managing that volume of work was just incredibly difficult. We recognise that, which is why the additional staff are needed and will make a big impact, I think, on the way that we communicate with families.
Yeah. Just not necessarily communication with with residents, etc., with clients, but more about communication within departments. I think that's something that may need reviewing the policies and procedures.
Yeah, well, I think it comes back to the point that Councillor Butler raised: homeworking and working within the office, and the difficulty, the greater difficulty in communications. It's something I hope it's going to be addressed in this 6-monthly review that's coming. Councillor Henry, I think you indicated.
Thank you, Chair. For those watching online, I hope there's a few people watching this. And I'm afraid that we're back to the place that we didn't want to be back to for this item anyway. But the service delivery of EHCPs sits with the Cabinet Member for Children and Families. So since May 2021, when this Conservative administration have led, there have now been, I believe, 7 EHCPs complaints to the Ombudsman, and all 7 have been found to be at fault. Today's complaint, I think, is the 4th this year, meaning that things are getting worse rather than better. That coupled with what I could call a damning Ofsted report from earlier this year, but I'm sure the Children and Families Committee will be looking at and scrutinising this area. I'm sure they'll be doing that. So my question to the officer would be, I said, this decision has cost this council £7,700 that we know of, and I know we haven't put officers' time in this calculation, have we? So I would thought it would be more money than that. So how much collectively have the council now spent on satisfying EHCP's ombudsman decision since 2021? Yeah. Given the number of children in similar circumstances, should they all put in an ombudsman claim, likely to be successful, looking at this? And how much is the council budgeting for this? And can we be talking about hundreds of thousands or more? Not sure. How many more ombudsman cases should we expect between now and the end of this year? And what number should the council be happy with? Basically, we're happy with none at all. Okay.
Well, thank you for those questions, Councillor Henry. You've answered the last one yourself. We won't be satisfied until we get no complaints upheld. We can't say that there won't be any complaints made because we have no control over that, in a sense. People are entitled, if they are dissatisfied with our complaints procedure, to put in a complaint to the Ombudsman. But I personally won't be satisfied until there are no findings of fault against us. The other figures, I'm not sure that you're going to have them at your fingertips this morning. So would it be acceptable for officers to give you written answers on those? Because, I mean, we're happy to answer them, but just don't have them to hand. You're happy to have well, you've got to be happy to have them because we haven't got them. As simple as that, you know. So if you're unhappy, you'll have to remain unhappy. I'm afraid. But you will get those figures, and you say that things aren't getting better. You've got to also bear in mind that a number of these are historical cases that are working through the system. But I would accept that there is still considerable room for concern, because I had a similar case of one of my constituents during the summer holidays, which was an ombudsman's case in the making. Fortunately, they came to me first, and we have now got it resolved. So that's one less to go through the system. So things are getting better from that point of view. But these are historical cases. Somebody's beeping. They're still beeping. We'll believe you. Have you done it now? Can we carry on? You sure? Thank you. Good. Okay. Councillor Saddington, you indicated.
I did.
Sorry. Oh, you want to come back?
Yeah, please, if it's all right. Thank you, Chair. I know you've answered some of the partial things. I do expect that the written answers will come to us later on. But it's clear from the discussion we've had anyway that this council is not delivering for children who need EHCP plans, And from today's discussion that we've had so far around the Ombudsman decision, it is also clear that, despite what you said, Chair, that things are getting worse and lessons are not being learned. That's all I'm saying. But no doubt we will in future sort of want to scrutinize how this is going as we move forward.
You have my word that we will, and I would dispute that things are getting worse. You could say that they're not getting as good as they should be, and we accept that. And we've got no choice but to accept that things have not gone well, because we had the independent Send Ofsted report, and it's there in black and white, and I don't shirk from that. I don't have to worry about it because I'm not responsible for it anymore. I could say a lot, but I won't. I'll leave that to call Councillor Saddington.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually agree with Councillor Butler's comments. And if we go back to until, I don't know, 2019-20, everybody worked here. Majority of people worked here. It was COVID that created the work from home. And for some strange reason, everybody liked it. Yes, we do, because you can go and have a coffee out in the sun and goodness knows what. But the fact of the matter is that when you are together in an office, apart from the camaraderie that you've got, you can also bounce ideas off each other. And as far as I can see, where decisions are being made, if the officer's actually working from home, that decision is not run past anybody, possibly, other than the person making the decision. It may be not. But could I ask the chairman if he thinks this is perhaps why we're getting so many more complaints to the Ombudsman, whereas perhaps when things were bounced around and it was more or less a general decision, things could have been a little different, perhaps.
I don't know. I think the fact that there have been a number of failings in some ways can be perhaps attributed to that, but it's clear that things have been going wrong for 18 months or so, and I hope in the report that's going to come forward you can also possibly address why it is that when things appeared to be getting difficult in terms of caseloads, because that's always the critical factor, caseloads, and it's obvious that caseloads were going up. Why appropriate action wasn't taken 18 months ago to deal with that increasing caseload? Because we know there are fluctuations, and you have to be fleet of foot to be responsive to those fluctuations. And if there was a blockage in the system in terms of administrative support, then why wasn't there extra administrative support brought in to deal with that? They are the ones that can deal with the communication to those residents, to those young people that have got the issues, and keep them appraised. If people are appraised of what is happening, or that there are going to be delays for whatever reason, they are much more understanding and much more willing to be accommodating. And it seems to me that that was a failure at that time not to deal with it. And I want that addressing in that report that you are bringing forward to us. I don't know whether that's helpful, Councillor Sadding. Councillor Upton, did you indicate? It's so long ago now, I can't remember.
Thank you, Chair. I just pick up the point that the common thread through all these reports seems to be communication or lack of. And I mean, on page 6 of this report, item 49, bullet point 3, it had not always, that's the county council, responded to Mrs F's communication or kept her informed about progress, etc. So that's the thread I'm picking up on. And I accept there's a whole massive communication going around the system. I expect most of it's electronic. My question is there a quality assurance or a QA system that tracks these communications? Because whenever I've investigated in the past, communication or lack of it seems to be the root cause of these breakdowns. But I've seen QA systems put in where if an individual doesn't respond to an email or a letter that's been sent to them, a QA system will track that and flag it up as not responded. So I don't know. Is there a QA system in existence, please?
I don't know. Can you answer that question for us?
Not quite to that degree, in terms that somebody could send an email to an EHC coordinator who would know whether or not it had been responded to, but we have made significant improvements to quality assurance in terms of case tracking, decision making, and quality assurance process in terms of reviewing what goes into our education, health and care plans. There's still work to be done in that area as we recruit the staff and get them trained, but we are aware of that, and we are closely monitoring that through close supervision with colleagues.
That's good to hear, and I'm hopeful that it will be a third-party independent assessor that comes in periodically to check on the QA compliance rather than an in-house audit. But we're getting a bit technical.
Oh, we are. Don't get technical, please. Thank you. Right, Councillor Smith, I think you indicated you want to come back again.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just picking up from what other colleagues have said. I was just wondering, is there any correlation with the number of complaints to the time period when people started working from home? Have they gone up? Have they gone down? Is that, and also along the same sort of theme, is I know when we had the personnel committee here before we changed to the cabinet system, one of the big things that we talked about quite a lot was levels of sickness and long-term sickness. And one of the highest areas with long-term sickness was in children's social care. Is there a correlation between the levels of sickness and number of complaints during that time period? Do we have a big retention issue? Do we have a recruitment problem? Is there an underlying problem that's causing this? Because, we can keep going over the same ground. It's communication. But if we're not getting to the underlying cause of it, then we're never going to fix the problem.
Okay, I think working from home has obviously made us more efficient in some way, in terms that there's less travel to and from school settings, and that's actually made us more effective. I think one of the things to consider is COVID had a massive impact for children and young people, in terms that the routines changed. Some didn't attend school at all, and as a result of that, we're seeing a massive increase in demand for services, and that's a fundamental driver, I think, for some of these complaints that we're seeing. In regards to turnover of staff in 2022, before I came into post, there was 6 members of staff out of 15. So you can imagine that we were very short staffed in terms that people were leaving, and sickness was at probably its peak. Since then, we're actually almost fully recruited, apart from the additional and new posts, and actually absence is probably at its lowest. And I've worked in 3 local authorities, and I'd say with confidence at this point, the staff team are very committed, and staff absenteeism is at a very low point. I don't think we've actually got anybody off sick at the moment.
Thank you. I've only got one more person, that's Councillor Lee, and then I think we'll wrap up. We've had a fair discussion on this.
Thank you. You can tell there's an election coming up, Councillor Henry. It's really interesting that you say that things are getting worse. I only read in the paper yesterday about Labour Birmingham Council. Have they gone bankrupt? I don't know. Yeah, not getting as worse as that, I don't think. However, we have put in place, since I've been the Vice Chairman, many measures to improve with our EHCP plans. And we are just waiting for us to catch up. As I understand it, these are historical. So I would argue that things are getting better, not worse. However, time will tell. The taste is in the eating, I think they say, or the test is in the eating. However, it is a nice little dig at us as the Conservative Rand Council. However, the things that we are picking up on and the issues that we are picking up on were issues that were in place when you were in charge. However, I don't think you had EHCP plans at the time. We are dealing with consequences of a long-run Labour council, I would dare to say. However, we are doing our best here, and we are holding to accounts, as I'm sure you would agree. But the question I would ask council officers is, you did mention that we were hiring lots of new staff. Are we paying them equally?
Yes, we are. I think.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Well, we've had a fair discussion on that, and you've been reassured as well, Councillor Henry, into the bargain that we can afford to pay for these extra staff as well, which must be good news. Anyway, the recommendations have been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show. No one against. Thank you very much. That is unanimous. And thank you for that. And I think you've got some messages to take away. Again, thank you very much. The next one is the report of the local government ombudsman, local government social care ombudsman annual review letter, which you've got set out in your papers, and we've got one recommendation at the top of page 3 of the report, which I move.
Chairman, I second resume right to speak.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that? Councillor Creamer.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. It's partly been answered in the previous debate, some respect, but on the question I've actually, let's just say comparing rates with other councils, etc. The information, page 28, the paper says that 81% of the complaints against council are upheld by the Ombudsman, which we've already gone through. And it's that other organisations comparing, not necessarily Birmingham, but other authorities, is that similar? And at the bottom of page 1, it takes 6% of similar organised provided satisfactory remedies, where we provided 0. And in your previous speech, I think you said you've actually done one. So that particular question you may have actually been dealing with, where 6% was dealt with by other councils, but we had 0 at that point. And what steps could the council learn from this report?
Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the questions, Councillor Creamer. Where should I start with? The similar organisations, the similar authorities. I've actually had a look at a few of them. There's one council that's not far from us that I'll be liaising with because their rate's around 70% upheld rate. But to be honest with you, pretty much every council across the country, their rate has gone up. And it, in detail in the report, it does mention about because the Ombudsman are actually choosing what to investigate now. If it's borderline, chances are, and they can't change the outcome for the complainant, they probably will not investigate it. So they're more likely to find fault with the cases that they investigate because it's in the national interest for them to do that. So the rates have gone up. Yes, they've gone up. We're not overly concerned because we know a lot of the work is being done. In response to the 6% question, yes, it is disappointing that there was no satisfactory remedy cases suggested before they've gone to the Ombudsman. But there are a lot of cases that we have dealt with where the remedy was satisfied before it even went to the Ombudsman. And I think what I tried to show in the report is that we've had 900 odd complaints last year, of which only 26 cases were actually investigated by Ombudsman. I think they kicked out 50 or 60 odd cases because they either thought there's no fault or there's no point investigating this, or it's not for the Ombudsman to investigate. So, but there is a lot of work being done on satisfactory remedies before we resolve the complaint because it's healthier to have that resolved. And one of the purposes of our workshops that my team are doing at the minute across the council is about getting on the front foot. If there's fault, recognising that and suggesting appropriate remedies and using the Ombudsman guidance to do that. And the feedback from the workshops has been very, very positive. And I think in time we will find, less cases going to the Ombudsman because we've satisfied the remedy and the complainant beforehand. But we will never have 100%, a 0 cases at the Ombudsman because some people are never happy. But as long as we can hand on heart say that we've done everything we can, then that's what we do.
And as I've said before, that when we get to the end of our complaints procedure, we always have to say to the complainant, you have a right of appeal to the Ombudsman. And if our complaints procedure has said we don't think there's any fault here, then I think it's almost inevitable that someone will go off to the Ombudsman. That's the nature of things. Right, Councillor.
Let me just say, I'm reasonably happy with that answer, that we actually are learning from others as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting at all that we're one of the worst, but as has been said earlier about other people as well, we aim for the best.
Well, I don't disagree, and we've had a number of themes as far as our complaints are concerned, and we've got to get on top of those. There's no doubt about it. Councillor Smith, you indicated, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 26 of the report, there's just something on there that doesn't properly sit right with me. The second to last paragraph, it says, in another case, it was disappointing to see that your council, having agreed to a specific financial remedy, failed to communicate accurately with the complainant, sending them a letter which did not offer the full amount. We corrected it promptly after the Ombudsman's office notified us, but how can we, we've been found wrong by the Ombudsman and then we go and mess up again? How do we get to a point where we make that sort of mistake when it's very clear what the Ombudsman's told us we've got to do? And I mean, it does say that it adds to the complainant's distress, and I can imagine that it would. But how do we make such silly mistakes?
How did you make a silly mistake?
Well, that was actually one of my team, so it's on my head, to be honest with you. That it was the Ombudsman suggested the remedy, and we sent out the form. And because it was a brand new, we've improved the process of how we pay remedy. The form was brand new. I can't remember the exact payment, but it was either 400 or 600, and we put 200 on the form. And it was purely because the form had just been taken from a previous complaint. It's a human error, but we have got processes in place now to make sure the form's correct. It's double checked by the other colleague when they do the form. So that should not happen again, and it was a one-off.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I take your point, but I think we have to accept that we are all human and we do make mistakes. I think the critical point is that it was corrected ASAP, and I don't think we should dwell too long on that. No, we wouldn't like any mistake. We don't want any mistakes to be made at all, but they will be, unfortunately. Anyway, with those comments, are we happy to move to the vote? All those in favour of the recommendations? No one against. Thank you very much. And then we come to item number 6 on the agenda, which is Members' Travel and Subsistence Scheme. This report was asked for by a number of members, and I did say that it would come to this committee, which it has done. And you've got the report, and you've got the scheme set out in front of you as well. On page 33, there are 2 recommendations, which I'm happy to move.
Chairman, I second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this report? Yes, Councillor Meakin.
Thank you, Chair. Independent Allowance members welcome the fact this report is before us today. We raised the concerns in May after the latest publication of members' expenses claim that showed one Conservative councillor driven to the Great Wall of China and back on recent mileage claims. At a previous meeting, Councillor Owen said that he would have a free and frank discussion about the mileage claims. This report doesn't contain the actual reasons why we asked for this review, so it cannot be read as anything but an update. It is a missed opportunity to get to grips with the issue. I think the disparity and the huge discrepancies and differences between the council's need to be looked at. Can you tell me how much scrutiny is being done with regards to the claims, or whether any questionable claims will be paid back? Thank you.
Well, you'll see that the second recommendation is that we ask for internal audit to have a look at the claims. I know there have been some, in my view, rather wild allegations made against certain members. So that's why we've included the recommendation that internal audit have a look at this and give the committee, and indeed give the council taxpayer, reassurance that the scheme is being applied appropriately and that there are no fraudulent claims. This is a scheme that is recommended by the Independent Remuneration Panel, and one that was adopted by council. I can't remember there being any objection to it at the time. And you say that this report is a lost opportunity. The opportunity is here now. What more do you want? Tell me. What more do you want? You have now got the opportunity that you asked for. So tell me what is wrong and what more you want to know.
Thank you, Jay. It's just more of a scrutiny down to, as you said, could be any fraudulent claims. If we've got that process in place, I don't think there's anything much more to say, to be honest with you.
Thank you. You had the opportunity and you've said there is not much more to say. Councillor Creamer, followed by Councillor Smith.
Very, very quickly on the recommendations. Item 1, no problem reporting it. Item 2, that members consider whether to. I would be happy to actually have that recommended internal audit carried out.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I would be happy for the internal audit to be carried out.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, there was just something that a part of the problem for me is that it's open to interpretation, some of this, and one of the claims was made for group meetings, which it does say in the report that if it's for a group meeting, as long as only county council business is discussed, then it's fine. But if for a standard group meeting, then it's not fine. So we don't know what's discussed at group meetings. So that's entirely for that person to decide. What it looks like to the public is very different. I'm not saying things outside of county business was discussed, but it's the appearance. So I think one of the things that we wanted to look at is the subjectiveness of this, that it is open to interpretation. And Mr. Chairman, one of the councillors claimed nearly £3,500 last year for it relating to outside bodies, which I appreciate is entirely covered under section 4. But the bit that I have got a concern about, and I don't fully understand, is part of that. It was claimed for charity work that they've done. Now, I can on hand on heart say I've done a lot of charity work, but I've never put a claim in for it. It's out of the goodness of heart. And I think a lot of members in this room have done the same thing. But I can't see anywhere under the approved duties where charity work would come under that. And what I'm seeking clarification from, Mr. Chairman, is from yourself that the only thing I can see is that it would come under section 7 on page 43, which would require approval from yourself as chairman of this committee. Did you approve that charity work? And will it be made into a recommendation next time? I'm not asking for them to be called in immediately, but next time the IRP are called in, will it be made as a recommendation for it to become a permanent approved duty under the scheme, which is written out on page 43? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. The short answer, no, I've not had to approve anything in consultation with the monitoring officer. All claims that are submitted are scrutinised by officers to ensure that they fall within the scheme recommended by the independent remuneration panel. And you talk about group meetings. Well, I don't know what you discuss at your group meetings. At our group meetings, and I presume the Labour group as well, we only have normally a group meeting prior to a county council meeting, and we discuss the county council agenda, and that is covered by the scheme of remuneration for travelling expenses. Other things may be discussed, but as long as the county council agenda is discussed, which forms the main part of any discussions, that is fine. Any extra group meetings are only called to discuss county council business. Any other outside activities that are covered under 7, I've not had any to approve as chairman of this committee. But item duty covered under 3 on page 43, anywhere within the county in connection with the functions of the county council and related to your role as an elected representative. And it does say travel claim form must clearly state the purpose. And so if a claim is accepted, then it must have met that test. So there's no discretion, there's no uncertainty. It has to meet that test, and it has to be set out clearly on the form. And if it's not set out clearly on the form, then those in democratic services and indeed the monitoring officer would ask for that to be set out clearly, so a decision can be made as to whether it is an approved duty. Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I can just come back on that. So, any charity work would have been approved under Section 3. I'm just trying to be clear because it doesn't make it very clear, because for me, it isn't related to your role as an elected representative to do charitable work. So, would it have been approved under that, or is there a different part? Where would charity work be approved under the current scheme that we have?
You're talking about charity work. I cannot comment, and I'm not going to go into individual members' claims. Those are reviewed independently by the monitoring officer and by democratic services. I don't know what you talk about charity work. The purpose of any visit must be related to your role as a county councillor, and that has to be stated on the form what the duty related to, and that duty has been accepted, whatever duties were carried out, and there's been no discretion necessary on any of the expenses submissions, because nothing has come to me under paragraph 7.
Chair, if I could what I was just trying to clarify is that would it be that section that claim that a claim would be done under? Would it be under Section 3? That's what I'm trying to get. Because like I said, it doesn't make it very clear. So I'm just trying to get that solid in my head, where it would be, what section it would be under.
Well, without knowing the particular duty that's being carried out, I can't say whether it would come under number 3 or what it would come under. But it's quite clear there that any duty that's carried out has got to be in connection with either the functions of the county council or related to your role as an elected representative. It's a duty that you are doing because you are an elected representative. Councillor Saddington.
Well, Chairman, a few minutes ago, you said that any expenses put in were monitored by the monitoring officer or that department,
Yes.
and they will sort anything out that doesn't look to be regular. So I think Councillor Smith's question's answered. People have put in expense forms, and it's surely up to those that are dealing with the expense forms to bring to the attention of the chairman if there is a problem. Where does it matter? Where it's
Not across the chamber, please. Not across the chamber, please.
the person paying the money will surely work out whether it's a legitimate claim or not, and if not, they'll go to the chairman to draw it to his attention. Well, it sounded like it.
Well, I'm always happy to clarify and to explain and to help members understand. It must be the teacher still in me that's doing that. Once a teacher, always a teacher. I can't help it, and I'm sorry. Councillor Henry.
Sorry, Councillor Henry, your microphone, please.
Sorry, yeah, so just a small point, just moving away from that discussion on Schedule 1, page 41 of the report. We all know here that the business manager is part of the cabinet, but on here, would it be prudent to say where it said on point 3, we say cabinet members? Would it be prudent to say something like cabinet members including the business manager, just for clarity? I'm not sure whether or not. Just a thought.
Scheme set by the IRP and approved by council.
That's the scheme is set by the IRP, the Independent Remuneration Panel, and has been approved by council. But I think when it's next reviewed, that is something that can be taken on board. We've made a note of that, and that can be taken on board. Thank you very much for raising that. Anyway, we've had an interesting discussion on that, which I hope we've now put to bed once and for all. And the report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So if we could move to the last item, which is the work programme, which I'm happy to move.
Chairman, second.
Thank you. All in favour? Thank you very much. And I declare the meeting closed at 11:20. Thank you very much.